good morning, and I take pleasure in welcoming all the participants for this special lecture on realities of COVID-19 and its management by Dr. Sudha Seshayan, Vice Chancellor, Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We start with a small sloka on Tulasi, which which will give you a lot of healing power. Mahaprasada Janani Sarva Saubhagya Vardhini Adi Vyadi Jara Muktam Tulasi Tvam Namostute. At the outset, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome the chief guest of this day, Dr. Sudha Seshayan, Vice Chancellor, Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai, for having accepted our request in delivering a special lecture to our faculty, students, and also to other stakeholders, the public in general, on realities of COVID-19 and its management. On behalf of the management of Kongu Nadu Arts and Science College, principal, and all the stakeholders of this institution, let me express a warm welcome to you, ma'am, for this session.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I welcome our secretary, ma'am, Dr. C.A. Vasuki, who is actually a pillar of support to all these programs. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I welcome Dr. Lakshman Swami, our principal, Dr. Chinnusamy, the Chief Executive Officer of Kongu Nadu Arts and Science College, Dr. Ram Mohan sir, the Administrative Officer, and the HODs of various departments, faculty members, and also people who have joined us from various other institutions. My special welcome to Dr. Anup Mittal, Dr. Valli from United Kingdom, who has joined us, and also to Dr. V. Selvarajan, retired professor of physics, Bharatiya University, and a galaxy of guests who have gathered here for this program. It is my honor to introduce the speaker of the day, Dr. Sudha Seshayan. She is currently the Vice Chancellor of the Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University since 2018 December. Prior to that, she was a Vice Principal of Madras Medical College and Director and Professor of Institute of Anatomy. And before that, she also held the position of Registrar and in charge of overall administration of the university. She has a host of professional accolades and recognitions. Notable among them are, she is an international advisory member in the editorial board of Gray's Anatomy, an international advisory member to the editorial board of Atlas of Clinical Cross Anatomy, author of Medical Encyclopedia, Maruthuva Kalanjiyam. She has contributed more than 80 articles to the Science Encyclopedia, Ariviyal Kalanjiyam, brought out by Tamil University, Tanjavur. She is a resource person for the value-based education programs of the University Grants Commission, Delhi, an expert of the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Kaushal Kendra of the UGC, and she is an eminent speaker and writer with more than 30 years of rich experience and a regular participant in several television and broadcasting programs, a compare and commentator for the Tamil Nadu government programs, medical educationist per se, and she's also the recipient of the Kalaimamani Award for the year 2005 from the government of Tamil Nadu and Sollin Selvar Award for the year 2015 from the government of Tamil Nadu. She has delivered several endowment lectures and professional lectures. Notable among them are the University of Madras Department of Vaishnavam Oration in the Philosophy in 2016, Vidya Subramaniam Endowment on Bhagavad Gita in 2008, and Inauguration Oration of the International Conference in Anatomy in the year 2016, S.T. Kasirajan Endowment Oration, Women Doctor Association in 2014, and so on and so forth. She has authored several books. Notable among them are Tiruvula, Spiritual Vigadan, Devara Tiruvula, a Spiritual Vigadan, Sundara Kandam, verse-to-verse translation of Valmiki Ramayanam, Varkai Vasapadum, and several host of other books. And she is a very eminent speaker, and having you today is our honor and privilege, ma'am. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I once again welcome all the participants who have joined here for this program on special lecture on realities of COVID-19 and its management. which is quintessential during this time of pandemic. And I request all the participants to interact with Dr. Sudha Seshan after her presentation is over. If you are not able to interact, please put your questions in the chat box and it will be answered. A kind request, please mute your mics and also your videos when the presentation is on. Thank you so much, and I welcome you all once again. Thank you. I now request our Secretary, Madam Dr. C.A. Vasuki, to deliver the presidential address.
Most esteemed speaker of today, Dr. Sudha Seshan, who is the Vice Chancellor of MGR Medical University and also a great Tamil scholar, and all my dear participants from far and wide who have joined. I wish you all a safe and healthy living in this unprecedented time of COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, the greatest lesson this COVID has taught us is that we are all in this together. We are in a position now where the whole world is facing a crisis. Human beings thought that we have ruled the world with technology, advancement in technology, science. We thought like there is nothing else can beat us. But last, small virus has taught us all a lesson that the advancement of technology is not has also made people vulnerable for several diseases. So today, this COVID-19 has caused a devastating effect on world economy and also the global health index. Surprisingly, there is a big shift in the attitude and behavior of all the individuals. Most widely spoken terminology now has become quarantine, which was not very much common in use. And this is not new to humankind, to mankind, because every 100 years there had been a pandemic in this world, and probably we don't live beyond 100. This is our turn to actually to be experiencing what a pandemic is. At the macro level, the pandemic has made people to reevaluate what we have to prioritize and the needs for the near future. For example, the ways and means of fighting epidemic and pandemic is available in Atharva Veda. Over 60% of Atharva Veda, which is devoted to Ayurveda, a traditional system in India. Charak Samhita is based on chapters of Atharva Veda, where many verses talk about the cause of epidemics and the ways to deal with it. Research on scriptures may provide some solution to coronavirus, which is now ruling the world. A substantial shift to preventive health care has also now taken place. Demand an increase for preventive health screening by the educated and well-off section of those may opt for it. But like people who can't afford and people who are having can adopt to traditional healing methods such as Ayurveda, naturopathy are also now, which is of a great demand. The focus on preventive health, especially that achieved through ensuring availability, people have now thought about good food, good water, and good way of life. So now we are all thinking about our changing our lifestyle. Also given us the opportunity to set our act right and concentrate on what which had been ailing in Indian society for a long time. On the ongoing lockdowns have also proved to a large extent that the issues such as air pollution can also to be addressed effectively by the government, and societies are ready to take steps. Our beloved Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has shown a prominence in various areas that has already pushed several initiatives like Poshan Abhiyan, which a long-term impact on health fundamentals and nutrition for children, pregnant women, and lactating mother. The Jal Jeevan mission that promises to provide safety drinking water, and a mass movement of Swachh Bharat and Fit India movement. All of them together indicate towards the essential things of healthy life that we can be before the momentum of COVID-19 with a greater and conscious participation of the public at large. I would say our Prime Minister is a great visionary. So she has thought about all these things, which is now very essential during this pandemic. And I'm sure today Dr. Sudha Session will throw much more light and clarity on the realities of COVID and its management. I once again, Madam, we hope for a wonderful talk and an interaction with you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now request our Swami to say a few words and address the gathering. So,
most respected Secretary and Director Dr. Vasuki Madam, energetic speaker Dr. Sudha Seshayan, Vice Chancellor of Indian Medical University, Dean R&D, the CEO and all the participants, a warm good morning to all. Korat Arts and Science College is an autonomous college established in the year 1973, marching gloriously towards of excellence in higher education and research, with the government vision of developing the total therapy of children in a holistic and adhering the principles of Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi, and the earliest institution to unite even while you alone scheme for the students, where the students not only learn but learns for himself. This enables skill development along with a strong theoretical base. The priority and mission of the institution is to impart holistic and man-making education to transform the student into a smart citizen. College has been recognized by the EDC as such of excellence. At the outset, it is my pleasure to welcome the guest speaker who is going to clarify our doubts on COVID-19. On March 11, 2020, the WHO declared the outbreak as a global pandemic. Since then, the number of cases across the globe has been increasing, and several strategies have been taken to control the outbreak by several governments. But in spite of mass awareness, things are unclear about this pandemic to many. We at Korat Arts and Science College are taking this small step to make things clear to faculty, students, and other participants so that they can spread this message to others. No one than other chief guest, Dr. Sudha Seshayan, will be the best person to address faculty, students, and public in total. On behalf of the management, I take pride in welcoming all the participants for this program and request you all to interact with the speaker and get your doubts clarified. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Ma'am, ma'am, can we start the PPT or?
We can start whichever way you want. Can I start?
Okay, no.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Yeah,
So,
you
shall
can.
I present the PPT, ma'am?
Yeah, you can put in the PPT also.
Okay.
Now, as we go along, I'll
Yeah.
probably prompt you as to when I want the next slide. Yeah, that's okay for you?
Sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good
That's
morning.
fine.
Good morning, namaskaram and vanakkam, everybody. I'm happy that we have quite a large gathering to discuss on something which is currently on. And as rightly pointed out by Dr. Vasuki, COVID-19 has indeed changed many of our attitudes, temperament, and probably would also go to change our lifestyles in future times. Now, before we deal into what should be done in future, let us try and understand something about this particular pandemic. See, this particular viral disease is a new disease. I think, Madan, you can focus on that slide which says the next one, I suppose it is. If I can have that. See, this is a new virus and a new disease. When I say it's a new virus, I mean the virus which we are now encountering was identified only in December 2019. I think there was a reference to the pandemic being declared on the 11th of March 2020. To go back in history, what exactly happened? We heard reports from Wuhan, China, that there was a new disease being encountered. And after 2-3 weeks, it was found out it was a viral disease, and the virus itself was completely new. So what we have at hand is a new virus, which was identified only in 2019, and a disease which subsequently was identified to be caused by the particular virus. That is the reason we call it COVID-19. COVID-19 is the name given to the disease. It is coronavirus infectious disease 2019, which has been abbreviated to become 19. Now, this virus, as we studied it a little further, we realized that it has some kind of a relationship between the earlier coronavirus, which affected the human population, the one that caused a disease called SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Now, SARS also started somewhere in Southeast Asia and spread to the world, but then was contained much before. And this new virus, if you remember, there was a time when we were referring to this as a novel coronavirus, because of the known coronaviruses, this was novel at that point of time. So we called it the novel coronavirus. And subsequently, scientific world thought we cannot call something novel eternally. Something else may come. So the name was changed. And on the 11th of February 2020, the World Health Organization decided to call this disease as COVID-19, at which time on the same day, the International Agency for Taxonomy of Viruses decided to call this SARS-CoV-2, meaning this is the second virus of the SARS group, the first one being the earlier SARS virus. Now, with regard to this virus or the transmission of disease, one thing is definite. That is the only thing that is definite at this point of time. And what is it? This particular virus has a kind of low killing rate, and it has a high infectivity rate. Now, if we try and compare as to what the earlier SARS virus was, the earlier SARS virus, I told you, did not create this much of havoc. The reason, it killed people. When a virus kills, when the killing rate of the virus, the killing power of the virus is more, the person who is infected gets into a serious trouble, serious disease, and probably dies. So what happens is the chain is broken. From that dead person, the virus is not in a position to go to someone else. And so as more people die, somewhere the chain gets broken. So any virus which has a high killing rate will not have that high an infectivity. In a way, it will be devastation, but then it will not spread beyond a level. But in the case of this particular virus, this is a virus which has a low killing rate, and because it has a low killing rate, it gets spread across the countries and it's become a pandemic. Now, this is an emerging pandemic. Why I say so, we still do not have complete details about this pandemic, and we do not know when it will get over. It is still ongoing. It is still continuing. It may continue for a year or more than that, we do not know. Madam Vasaki was referring to the earlier pandemics that we have had. Every 100 years, we have had pandemics, or sometimes we've had more also. The last that the world encountered was the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, which lasted for about 3 years. It started in 1918 and went on till 1920. So that is the last experience that we have, that a pandemic lasts for about 2 to 3 years. But due to technology and due to advancement in medicine, we anticipate that this time may be reduced when we encounter the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, going beyond this basic information, can I have the next slide where you find the picture of the virus per se? Now, as you look at this picture, you would find that there is a kind of a spiky envelope. Those of you who belong to microbiology and other related sciences will know there is a kind of a spiky envelope that this virus has. There are lots of spikes. The reason why it is called corona. Now, corona is the Latin word to indicate a crown. When you look at the virus under the electron microscope, the group of viruses which belong to this family appear to have something like, some crown sitting on them. That is the reason they were called coronaviruses. Of course, coronaviruses is a large group, and many coronaviruses are known to us. These coronaviruses can create in the human beings, they can produce a disease starting from a very simple cold to a very serious disease like the SARS, or another one called the MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, was another major epidemic that broke out in the Middle East area and was also caused by a coronavirus. And there are other coronaviruses which do cause diseases in the rodents and the birds. The birds coronavirus, the avian coronavirus, is a serious one, and it causes a lot of respiratory problems and dermatological problems in the birds. The rodent coronavirus appears to be quite close to the SARS-CoV-2 that we encounter, but then does not cause a major disease in the rodents. So it is possible that any of the animal coronaviruses could have mutated to become what is being encountered now as the SARS-CoV-2. But what is important in this is, please look at the picture once again. You will find there is a spiral inside. That is the RNA core, the RNA genome of the virus. And this RNA genome being surrounded by one envelope, which again is surrounded by another thicker envelope, which is a lipid envelope. Now, essentially, RNA viruses are viruses which keep changing themselves, mutating themselves very often. That is one of the reasons that we find it is not that very easy to find a drug for the RNA viruses and find a vaccine for the RNA viruses also. Though work is going on all over the globe, RNA viruses are those kind of viruses which keep changing, at least in point mutation. Many of you would have read the recent newspaper reports in the last 2-3 days where more clades have been identified. There are about 48 clades have been identified in the Indian SARS-CoV-2. So those are all indicative of these small mutations which are happening in the genomic sequence of the virus. And because the genomic sequence keeps changing, it's difficult to find one single cure or one single vaccine. One example to be quoted here is the influenza virus. The influenza virus is also a coronavirus. Influenza virus is also an RNA virus, and the influenza virus also keeps changing itself. And because of this, there is no standard influenza vaccine. Even in those countries where it is customary to have a vaccine for influenza, we find the vaccine keeps changing. And you might have heard in countries like the United States where they say, this year influenza vaccine shot may not be helpful for your influenza attack the next year. So that is the characteristic of the RNA virus, and SARS-CoV-2 is an RNA virus. Now, these are all the problems that the real problems that we encounter when we work with the virus per se. And that is why the next slide. That is why, as such, we don't find any drugs which are specific to the virus, and we don't find any vaccine which again is specific to this virus. So, of course, lots of work is being done all over the world. Even in our own country, we've been trying to do a lot of work, especially with our traditional formulations and our plants and herbs, which are a household name in this part of the world. And all that work is leading to some progress. Let's see that a little later. So what now happens is, with no proper specific medicine in hand and no specific vaccine available, the only resort that we have to control the pandemic is to go for prevention. Of course, we are knowledgeable about the information that prevention is better than cure, but then when a pandemic is raging its war, there is also a search for cure. Now, what happens, like what exactly will be the kind of activities that one can practice? Now, to know that, it is always better to know how does this disease spread. I'm reminded of the Tirukural from Valluvar, where it says, Noi Nadi, Noi Mudal Nadi. So it is very, very essential to know as to how the spread occurs, the transmission occurs, and only this transmission information will be able to tell us as to what kind of prevention mechanism will help. Now, it is very, very, very essential for all of us to remember that this is a human-to-human transmission. The predominant way of transmission of SARS-CoV-2 is human-to-human. The moment we realize that this is human-to-human, we also start to realize as to what the prevention technique should be. Of course, there is another aspect of transmission, which is the fomite transmission. But the fomite transmission is very minimal and is dependent on the human-to-human transmission. The human being who's infected with the virus keeps shedding the virus. The virus is a nanoparticle and cannot be seen with our naked eyes. But then, the truth is that if one is infected with the virus, that person keeps shedding the virus. It is possible that the virus is being shed in all body secretions. And that is the reason when the pandemic began, the major call was kind of practice cough etiquette, practice masking the face, and practice avoiding any human-to-human contact. If I'm infected with the virus, I shed the virus through my body secretions, which can be through the nasal secretions, it can be through the oral secretions, or it can be even through sweat, which we are not very clear. We have no complete studies to indicate that the virus is being shed in the sweat, but then it has been found that even if a person dies out of COVID-19 disease, the virus has been noted on the skin for about 5 to 6 hours after death. So it is very likely that the virus gets shed through any of the body pores which are on the skin. So essential prevention mechanism will be to cut the chain, break the chain of transmission by avoiding human-to-human transmission. Now, who can transmit? Can I have the next slide? Who can transmit? Anyone who is infected with the virus can transmit. This is where we need to know something more important about the virus. This is a virus with low killing power, I told you. It does not kill people that easily. That is a good thing about the virus. If 100 people get infected, only 20% show symptoms. and 80 people of the 100 do not show any symptom at all. In other words, they are not afflicted by the disease. They are only infected with the virus. So they remain what are called asymptomatic, without symptoms. Now the trouble comes with a person being asymptomatic. Someone is asymptomatic, not showing the symptom at all. Now, if I'm asymptomatic, but lodging the virus, I come to you, talk to you, you're not aware that I'm sick. I'm really not sick in the sense of the word, but then I'm lodging the virus and I'm shedding the virus. And you as a person interacting with me will not even know that I'm shedding the virus. You're likely to shake hands with me. You're likely to be staying close to me. And as I speak to you, I could be dropping the viral droplets on you, whereby you could get infected. So any asymptomatic person can be a carrier of the virus. And in fact, much more than the symptomatic carrier, it is the asymptomatic carrier who would be spreading the disease more. The reason, you know someone is sick, you don't go near them. You suspect COVID, you don't go near them. But then when a person is not obviously sick, not apparently unwell, you still have contact with the person. And you don't think, you don't suspect at all that you could be taking the virus from that person. There is more possibility of transmission. That is why the asymptomatic carriers are called super spreaders. They spread the disease more. They are called super spreaders. Of course, the symptomatic carriers can also transmit the disease, but that would be in close contacts. A person is symptomatic at home. The person could be transmitting to the household contacts or people who come in close contact with that individual. What is good about this virus is that it does not create symptoms in 80% of those who are affected. That is a good sign because the morbidity of the disease will be low. The disease will not cause any problem in these 80%. Now, what happens in the remaining 20%? Even in the remaining 20%, 15%, that means 15 out of every 100 infected will still not have a major disease. They might show minor symptoms, fever for about 2-3 days, or they could have some cough or some kind of a sneezing, appearing to be having sore throat, a few symptoms like the regular flu. That is why we call it ILI, meaning influenza-like symptoms. And then within about 3-4 days, the whole matter settles. So it is only the next 5% that may go for serious disease. And even if you try and work out there, we have noticed that even in that 5%, it could be probably only 0.5% that will go for a need for the ventilator, and about 2.3% people will require high flow oxygen. And on the whole, only about 5% of the total infected population will require an intense care treatment. Intense care treatment will be required for about 5% of those affected. And within that 5%, within those 5 individuals, maybe 2.3 to 2.4 individuals will require a high flow oxygen, and much less will require 0.5% will require the need for a ventilator. With that kind of information, what do we learn? The first lesson that we learn here is you have to break the chain for the disease not to spread further. So how do we break the chain? That is why much early in this epidemic, everyone who was concerned was screaming quarantine, isolation, and social distancing. Now, once again, Madam Vasiki was stating about this word quarantine. This is one new word that we have learned. Yes, not only one single word, but then we have learned a horde of words along with it. Something called social or physical distancing. Then you talk about quarantining. Then you talk about isolation. Why all these became very important? Because there is a necessity to break the chain of transmission. So how do we break the chain of transmission? Simple. Human to human. So you cut the human to human contact. To cut this human to human contact, we advocate practicing of physical distancing. In fact, the term social distancing is a kind of a misnomer. Social distancing came up somewhere in the Western world in about 2 to 3 centuries ago to indicate people to stay away from one another. But then we find social distancing is a kind of a misnomer phrase. The reason being we are virtually connected. Now, there was a comment in the chat box I found. We are virtually connected. There is no kind of quarantine by mind and quarantine by spirit. True. We are virtually connected. So what is required is a physical distancing. If there is a human being, we request the other human being to stay at least 5 feet away from person number 1. And why do we say that? Now we go back and try and find out what are all the ways by which this virus can go from one person to another person. How can it jump or how can it hop? Number 1, when the person coughs, sneezes, speaks. Why? Why? Because we have now been talking about someone shedding the virus. Now let's see the other aspect, someone acquiring the virus. Say I am shedding the virus and you're standing opposite me. You will take the virus from me. How will you take it? How will the virus enter your body? The predominant route of entry is the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. In other words, as you breathe in, if there is a virus particle in the droplets of air that you breathe in, the virus can get into your nasal tract, into your respiratory tract. And most of us don't breathe only through the nostrils. We also have some kind of oral breathing, or when we speak or something like that, we take in that air, the air that surrounds our face. So if there are viral particles, viral droplets, as we gulp or as we kind of, take in some air through the mouth, the viral particles can get in. So the predominant route of entry will be the mucous membrane in the oral cavity and in the nasal cavity. That is why the virus gets into the nasal tract, it stays somewhere in the throat area and then slowly descends into the lower respiratory tract, that is into the lungs. One other route of entry, which can be something which can be missed out in the face, is the eye. The viral droplets can enter into the body through the eye. In the eye, you have the conjunctiva. You find a thin membrane, which is the conjunctiva. So the viral particles can go through the conjunctiva into the body. So essentially you find it is the face zone, it is the face area which is prone for taking in the virus. The other areas, there is no mucous membrane exposed. Now, it is not the skin through which the virus goes in, but it goes through the mucous membrane. Mucous membrane which is exposed in the body is the mucous membrane in the oral and nasal areas, and of course the conjunctiva which is close to the mucous membrane. Cannot be technically described a mucous membrane, but then it's something similar. The other mucous membranes of the body are fairly hidden or not seen or concealed within the body itself. So that is the reason, if this is going to be the route of entry, the route of entry will have to be protected. And how do we protect? One way of protecting it is to ensure masking the face so that your nose is masked, your mouth is masked, and the virus is being filtered out. You may ask me who should wear the mask, because sometime in the early part, there was a kind of a discussion where people kept on saying a person who's symptomatic or the person who has the disease can mask, but not the other person. Now that is a little tricky. Madan, if you can skip one slide. I think we are in that how to prevent that slide. The next slide and the next slide. Please go to the next slide, which shows about, which is a picture about the mask. And I suppose that people could see that slide. If you notice that picture, you will find there is one woman who is standing and probably she is speaking or coughing. The picture is not very clear. It appears as though she is only speaking. But then she is throwing a lot of viral droplets. What happens is, as we speak or as we sneeze or as we cough, we throw droplets of the oral secretions and the nasal secretions. There is not much of difference between the nasal and oral because it is all in one continuous cavity. So as we speak, there could be some salivary droplets being shed. And as we sneeze, some more salivary droplets, the secretions would be shed. The virus would be sitting in these droplets. So these droplets, if someone is close by to that individual, you find two other people opposite. So if they are within a distance of about 3 feet, these droplets, which are floating in the air, can directly go into their oral or nasal cavity as they breathe in. That is why the matter of distancing becomes important. And in the same picture, you also find of the two people who are standing opposite, you find one is having a mask and the other one is not. Now, what happens as this unhealthy person or infected asymptomatic person, I wouldn't even call unhealthy, but then an asymptomatic person, as she is throwing the droplets, the person who's cladding or donning the mask is at a minimal risk because the droplets are not likely to get into him. But then there is another person who's standing without a mask, and you find an arrow stating maximum exposure because it is that individual who gets the entire droplet lot into herself. In the same picture, you find there's another part of the picture in the lower half. You find the asymptomatic person donning the mask, and you also find the other side, the person who is donning the mask is under minimum exposure. Now you find because of the mask, the amount of viral droplets coming in is also reduced. And the person, if the person, the opposite person is also donning the mask, the risk is much, much reduced. That is why we now keep insisting, everyone please wear a mask. And my special mention here would be, please avoid the habit of removing the mask when you speak. Now, right now, if you see me, if you see my picture, which may be coming to you, I have my mask undone. The reason, I don't have anyone in my room and no one is at risk, so I have undone. But then if there's going to be someone else in my room, I would not have undone my mask and I would be wearing my mask and speaking. Yes, it is a little difficult. It is a little difficult to speak with the mask on, but then we need to practice. Probably practice makes things perfect and we need to practice. We've got used to so many things. We were never used to air conditioning before. We got used to it. We were not used to technology, but we got used to it. So there are things where we need to think of what is the future and think of how much we are exposing people. And then we'll have to train ourselves to using the mask regularly. So please do not remove the mask when you're speaking, because the speed by which the droplets come out during speaking are the same as the speed with which they'll come out when someone is sneezing, not coughing, mind you. Coughing, the speed is a little less. I'm not saying coughing is safe. No, no, coughing is not safe. But then coughing sends out the viral droplets at a less speed compared to sneezing. And the speaking speed and the sneezing speed of viral outrage is the same. So it is essential for us to think. I've noticed very many people, even educated people, who wear their mask, not covering the nose and the mouth, but then kind of, ornament across the neck. It is not an ornament. It has to be covering the nose and the face, the nostrils, nose and the mouth. It is not sufficient if you wear it kind of, low down, only covering the mouth, but not the nostril. Please wear it across so that the nostrils and the mouth are closed, because you normally breathe in air through your nostrils and you may not be able to take in the virus if you cover your nostrils. So that is essential. And how else can we break the chain? Can we go to the next slide, the one that is before the mask picture? Now, I don't want to drag on too much, so I would kind of give you a broad overview. The way we can break this chain is to have 3 areas marked. Area 1 will be concentrate on personal hygiene. Area 2, concentrate on distancing hygiene. Area 3, concentrate on environment hygiene. Now, what is this personal hygiene? Just a few points to note in personal hygiene. This is how we will have to live with the virus for the next probably 1 year or more. Now, when the government of India a few weeks ago said we will have to live with the virus, people kind of got offended and started screaming, what kind of a statement is this? But that is what fact is. They are not telling you that they are not taking steps. They are only telling you we will have to learn to kind of adapt ourselves to certain lifestyle modifications to combat and fight this virus. So we will have to learn to live with the corona. Now, whatever we do, we may have a lockdown. We may say, no, don't do this, do not do that. We may have regulations. It's only the human beings who will be able to understand the regulations. The virus is not going to read all the regulations and say, okay, fine, let me leave your country or let me leave the world. It's going to stay on the planet. It's come. It's going to stay on the planet. So how do we learn to live with the virus? Number 1, or part A, is personal hygiene. What do we do in this personal hygiene? 1, learn to use the mask. At all times when you get out of your household, please wear the mask, please carry it. Yes. And please use the mask when you're speaking to someone else. And even within the household, if you think that you're becoming a little sick, you may have a cough or not necessarily COVID, but you could probably feel a little sick because of some other reason, still wear the mask. Do not expose your own kith and kin, because the baseline as of now is to think that every one of us is COVID-19 positive and asymptomatic. That is the baseline. If you talk to me, I would have to remember I could be positive and symptomatic, and you could be positive and symptomatic. So in the bargain, I should not spread it to you and you should not spread it to me. That is what we have to think. There is nothing wrong in this thinking. We don't have to think that someone is telling something offensive. Let us not think like, oh, I don't have the disease and that person is treating me like this, that, and all that. This is a prudent fact, and we'll have to practice our lifestyle adaptability to this fact. So the baseline is to remember that anyone could be COVID positive. And what do? We see to that the human-to-human transmission is cut off. So if you feel a little sick, even at home when you are, please wear the mask. And if you're at home, you don't wear the mask, but then someone comes home. Don't tell me relatives are not coming these days. Fine, relatives are not coming, friends are not coming, but then you could have still someone coming in for some emergency services. Say, for example, a particular pipeline is broken. You would call for the plumber. You can't have a pipeline broken for 2-3 days at home, right? So the delivery boy of the LPG cylinder could be coming home. Now, when someone comes from outside, just be prudent to say, please wait for a few minutes, take your mask, wear your mask, and let that person in. Nothing wrong in this. You wear your mask, everyone at home wear the mask when someone else is coming from outside. Now, this is all part of the personal hygiene. And keep your hands clean as much as possible. Why? This is where the second aspect of the transmission, which I skipped at that point of time, comes into importance. We have something called fomite transmission. Now, if I can have the slide which shows the picture for the mask, Madan, if you can get it projected, you would see. Now, when the person who is asymptomatic is talking or coughing, what is happening? The droplets are coming out. Now, the droplets are very light because this virus is a very light virus. It's a nanoparticle. The droplet which holds the virus will also be very light in weight. So it will just float in air for about 3 feet. But then beyond 3 feet or 5 feet, it cannot float because at that level, it is comparatively heavier than the particles in the general air. So what happens? It falls down. That is why we say for a distance of about 5 feet, if you keep the other person away, even if there is a kind of a viral shed, the viral particles would fall down. But where will they fall? They will fall to the surface, which is close by. So if I'm sitting on a chair and a table in front of me, when I speak, the particles would drop, the droplets would drop onto my table. Or if I stand, probably the particles would drop onto the object close by. It could be the handrest of a chair which is close by or some other thing. So the moment someone else keeps the hand on the table or the handrest of the chair, what happens? They could take that droplet on themselves. Let us see this way. You come to my table, I'm talking, and my viral droplet has shed on the table. It's there. You keep hand on my table. And when you go out, casually, you keep your hand on your nose or you touch your eye or touch your mouth. You would be taking the droplet directly into your mucosa. That is why we say don't touch any part of your face. Please learn. Now, this is what our ancestors told. You remember, they said, don't touch the mouth, don't touch the nose. Like if there was an old party at home, some of you could remember the party would not permit you to touch your nose or mouth at any point of time or in front of others and things like that. It was a kind of, health mechanism. It was a kind of lifestyle adaptation for keeping good health. Okay, now the importance is that you could be taking the viral droplet from any fomite. So one way of preventing this fomite transmission is don't touch anything. If you happen to touch anything, immediately wash your hands. Now it's very difficult for us to remember if we touched anything when we went out. Very difficult to remember. That is why take a general precaution. Presume that you might have touched something, so keep cleaning your hands quite often. And don't touch the lift button or don't touch the handrest or don't touch the handle knob, because these are areas which could have been touched by others and the viral droplet could still remain there. to avoid fomite transmission. And how do you avoid fomite transmission? Keep sanitizing your hand. If you don't have water and soap, which can be freely available, you keep it in your house, in your office, with you, you keep a small soap box wherever you go. But if water is not available, then take an alcohol-based hand sanitizer, because alcohol kills the outer envelope. Now you will have to remember what you saw in that picture. The viral genome is in the center, and then there is an envelope, and there is still a further envelope which is made of lipids or fat substances. Now fatty substances will be broken down by the soap, and that is why we say keep washing your hand for 20 or 30 seconds, wherein if there was a virus lodging in the gaps of your fingers or on your hand, the viral envelope will be broken by the soap and the viral genome will be exposed. Good thing is the viral genome is exposed. After some time, the viral genome will disintegrate. In other words, the virus will die. Virus will die is a wrong way of expressing it. But then for understanding, I say that virus will not die because virus is not a living thing. A virus is a living thing within a living thing and a non-living thing on a non-living surface. So it's not technically correct to say the virus will die, but then the virus will get disintegrated. Once the RNA gets disintegrated, the virus cannot be infective. That is why we keep saying, keep washing the hands so that the viral envelope will be broken. Alcohol does the same job. Alcohol kind of penetrates into the envelope and the envelope breaks away. So that is to prevent the fomite transmission. We talk about hand hygiene, practice cough etiquette. Yes, close your mouth with cloth, not your hands. I notice some people coming out of the roads even without a mask, and then if somebody is noticing them, they just keep their fingers across the mouth and the nose. No use at all, because there is so much of gap between your fingers that a virus, not one virus, but then a big chunk of viruses can travel through that. So it is not sufficient. The reason we say keep a cloth is that the droplet which is coming out will not travel, because the cloth will absorb the droplet, will absorb moisture, and the droplet will settle into the cloth. That is why a handkerchief or a towel is the best. If not, at least tissue paper, but not just closing the hand, closing the mouth with hand and coughing or sneezing. So these are all part of the personal hygiene. The second thing is, of course, distance hygiene. Distance hygiene is maintain the distance wherever you go. And I do find a lot of people going to the shops and all that. Now, my small request is, if there are 2 people inside the shop, please don't go in. Please wait outside. Nothing is lost. You don't have to rush in. Please wait outside and go in only after persons have come out and you still have space of about 6 feet gap between the shopkeeper and yourself. Otherwise, don't go. And on the road also, don't be very close. I do find people who are walking, 2s and 4s walking. And my request to youngsters, especially men, youth, I do find 2, 3 of you standing and chatting. Now, all your chat can be elsewhere on the virtual mode, but then please don't stand so close by and chat, because it is not that you're not being friendly. It is not that you're being unfriendly, but then I don't want you to get exposed to the virus. Don't be friendly with the virus. So these are small measures that all of us can practice. And we'll have to consciously practice this. We'll have to auto-suggest to ourselves, yes, sometimes we tend to forget, but then we have to keep telling ourselves, no, this is what I have to do. And each one, we can tell each one of us, like, I meet you. If I forget the mask, you can remind me. Or you forget something, I can remind you. So distancing hygiene is very important, and distancing hygiene can be practiced and should be practiced everywhere, preferably even inside the house. Even inside the house. Please practice distancing hygiene, and especially with the person who goes out and come back. Now, not necessarily every one of you should go out. It is not necessary at all. Only for essentials, you go out, and make it a habit, like only one member of the family goes out, or maximum 2 members, not everyone. The others can remain at home, but then the member who goes out can practice a little distance hygiene from the others. Nothing is lost. Don't think that we are losing on relationships. No, it is not your lack of affection or lack of kindness. It is that you're trying to be a little scientific and prudent. And you're trying to safeguard, protect your kith and kin. So if you have to go to the office or if you have to go out and come, please try and remain a little away from the rest of the family members, especially old ones. If there are senior citizens at home, please try, keep them inside another room as much as possible and don't expose them to all your dust and whatever you bring from outside. I would even go to the extent of saying, keep all your things which you take out, please keep them at some point, some entry point in the house. Don't carry everything inside. Even the currency notes that you use outside, please try and keep them elsewhere. Like, don't mix it with your mother's currency note or the coins which some senior members will have inside the house, because we do not know, we still do not know, like, what are all the fomites which carry the viral particles. There have been lots of studies. People ask me as to how long the virus remains viable on non-living surfaces. We still don't have the final word on these. There has been a lot of work on wooden surfaces. It appears to be viable for about 4 to 5 hours. Glass surfaces for 4 to 5 hours. Copper just about 3 hours. But then on plastic, it's supposed to remain viable for about 12 to 24 hours. We still don't have the final say. And all that information will come only after about 2-3 years, because we need to do more and more work. And whatever we know about other viruses like smallpox viruses was all out of work for about 20-30 years. So don't expect all the information, the final information, to come as the pandemic is emerging. Now people are concentrating on fighting the pandemic and not trying to fix all these basic trivial information. Be careful, that is all. Think that the fomite has viable virus and try and work out your modalities of not touching these surfaces. Try and keep away, try and keep from the individual who could be shedding. And one other thing is people who are riding the two-wheelers. Now there are lots of regulations. I'm not here to comment on the regulations. I'm not here to discuss. We lose time on that. But then the regulations are good. And please remember, the regulations are only for the common society. It's for the common good of the society. So all of us will have to follow the regulations. Let us not think that if we break the regulation, we are above the regulation. No, this is for the protection of the society that we need to follow. And what I find is two-wheeler riders, very often, when there is a kind of a loosening of the lockdown also, if you have to drive, what happens in the signal is what is sometimes irritating. Kindly pardon me for that pungent word, but then it is really irritating. There is already one two-wheeler person, the two-wheeler parked right at the starting point where the signal has made him stop. And then I find 2-3 other two-wheeler riders. What is a hurry? You rush and kind of, deviate here, there, go this way, that way, and then go stand close to that person, just about 2 feet distance. And between these two-wheelers, I find the third two-wheeler coming in and insinuating between the two. Now just think, all of you might be wearing masks. Some of you are not. Some of you are just having it dangle across the neck. And it is that signal time that one of you wants to speak over the phone. So you remove your mask and speak into the phone. The same point of time, the next two-wheeler person wants to sneeze. He can't control. He sneezes. Just imagine you're within about 2 feet distance. Of course, you will speed away in the next 2 minutes, but then there is a possibility. It could be even a 5% possibility of someone sneezing. It could be even 1% possibility, but then why do you want to expose like that? And the child, sometimes I find an elder person carrying a child, the child is sitting there or standing there in front, in the front portion of the scooter, and then looking up at the next person who sneezes. Now, these are all things which we can avoid. What is the hurry and going and insinuating there? Just stand a little behind, 2 feet distance. Nothing is lost. You could still catch up in the next few minutes. So these are all distancing hygiene aspects that we'll have to practice. And of course, coming to the last one, which is the environmental hygiene. Environmental hygiene is important in that you keep your surroundings, your immediate surroundings at home, at work spot, clean, so that fomite transmission is avoided. That is, in a nutshell, the things that we need to practice. So I would just run through the remaining slides. The next slide, I think, is the one with the mask matter. We've already seen that. And the next slide is again the picture of the virus. This is to kind of tell you the washing hand hygiene principle, where you find the envelope would be broken and the RNA which is there, the spiral RNA, will get disintegrated if the envelope is broken. That is why we keep saying clean up, clean up, clean up the area, clean all the tables, the dining table at home, the kitchen table, the kitchen shelf, all those areas where people are likely to move again and again. And when you eat outside, please don't stand and eat where someone else is eating. Now, when you're eating, no mask can help you. You can't eat with your mask on. So if you tend to eat on a table where someone else is also eating, there is a possibility of transmission. So fomite transmission can be avoided if we are a little thoughtful. And please move to the next slide. That is my penultimate slide to say the baseline is, think everyone has COVID-19. Everyone is positive. I'm not saying, God forbid, let not people get into the disease, but then please think the virus is gone in and the baseline is don't give, don't take. You might enjoy a give and take elsewhere, but not here in this pandemic. Don't give, don't take. So take all those precautions. We will have to adapt our lifestyle. Yes, this is what it's going to be for the next 1 year or a little over 1 year or maybe even 2 years. But then let's train ourselves. If it's going to be a longer period, I wish it's not a longer period, but then if it's going to be a longer period, we would train ourselves right from now on. And this has to be our lifestyle, because even in Tamil Nadu, we are anticipating the peak to occur only around October, which means we are right now in June, July, August, September, October. We will only be ascending. Now, all of you will remember, just think, imagine an ordinary graph. In a graph, you have an ascent, you have a peak, and then a downslope. Now, we are still in the upslope. Please don't compare with countries which have gone into the downslope. They have gone into the downslope. UK has gone down, US has gone down, or whatever European countries. The downslope has begun there because their total population is much less. Our total population is large. So in a country where the total population is large, the ascent is still happening. So we are only ascending up. So as we ascend up, we'll have to reach the peak and then descend down. So we are expecting the peak to occur sometime end of September, or it may get stretched till mid-October or even early November. Why I say that it could be stretched? The peak will not occur the same way every state or every district. The peaks in different districts could be slightly different depending on the total population there, depending on various other measures. The density of population, you find the metro cities are affected. The reason why metro cities are affected more is that the density of population is more. But then if the density is less, it could be a different epidemiology. Now, we cannot discuss all the matters of epidemiology here, but then please understand there are various determinants. So the peak can occur at different points of time in different districts and different states, and it could still be a staggered time. It could extend for about a month also. So we are still in the ascent, and as we are on the ascent, we like to understand that these are all the measures that we need to practice and adapt ourselves so that we will have a good descent also. Now, the ascent cannot be avoided. but what we can avoid is the mortality from the disease. It is good that the disease has only 5% or less than 5% mortality. 15 people who are affected are also without any major disease. It's only the remaining 5%, and even there, the mortality is much less. People do come out well from the disease. But why do we have to expose even that kind of? So to reduce the mortality further, to reduce the morbidity further, I think we have to practice all these adaptable changes. With that, I would just like to say thank you at this point of time and take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you so much.
If there are any questions.
I request, yeah, there are a few questions, ma'am.
I think I do see some questions. Can we go through some of the questions? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
There is a
Question one is
Dr. Selvi. That the question that I can see right away now. Is it necessary that all should wear an N95 mask? No, not necessary. Not everyone should wear an N95 mask. It is not necessary, madam. It is that only the frontliner who's treating the COVID patient could wear an N95 mask. The rest of us can wear an ordinary, what you get in the surgical store, the ordinary triple layer surgical mask, or even a cloth mask is sufficient for people who are exposed in the community. For people who become frontliners and get into the laboratory or get into the operation theater, there are different types of masks. The rest of us, we don't have to bother. It is the major droplets that we need to prevent. So try and wear the ordinary cloth mask that you're getting. Don't get perturbed about the technicalities that people give on all the social media messages that you get regarding mask. Don't wear this, wear that, and all that. A cloth mask, best would be if you wear a cloth mask, you have the cloth stitched in 2 layers, not 1 layer, but then 2 layers. That would be a good mask for the people in the community who are not frontliners or who are not actively exposed to the laboratory or the virus. And there is another question. Is COVID-19 overhyped? A comment on the herd immunity. Yes, Mr. Ravichandran Marimuthu, I don't think so it is overhyped, considering that it is a global pandemic. I do not know if you're trying to talk about bioterrorism, but then I refrain on commenting about bioterrorism because right now we know nothing about it. We have no information as to whether this was a manufactured virus or a regular virus. One thing about viruses is that they can mutate whichever way they want. That is what a virus is. You call a computer virus a virus. Why? The basic property of a virus is this. A virus gets into a living cell, starts taking copies of its own self. When it starts taking copies of its own self, it has 2 mechanisms. One is it utilizes the genetic material of the cell into which it has gone. So it's trying to take that genetic information and make a copy of itself. The other mechanism is it takes some bit of itself and puts it into the genetic information of the host cell. So both way it is damaging. It's taking host cell information and kind of modifying it, and putting its own information and kind of modifying the host cell information also. This is what a virus does. This is what is called viral replication. A computer virus does the same thing. That's why we called it a computer virus. The computer virus, the program that goes into the computer, damages the existing programs inside and starts replicating itself. Now, why I say this is the virus as such, the virus by nature is something that is capable of replicating and damaging things. So we do not know if this SARS-CoV-2 was manufactured or not. Nobody will be able to tell us. So let us not break our heads on that. It has come as a pandemic. So instead of thinking of overhyped or whatever, let the agencies, there are agencies, even countries have asked, even our own country has asked the WHO to work on that. Let's not break our head on that unless we are directly involved in that investigation. Let us now try and do things that we can do from our side. Now, what about the herd immunity? Herd immunity is something good, but then one word about herd immunity. We do not know if this virus is still giving us herd immunity. We are not very clear about it, number one. Number two, in the past, all our experience with herd immunity, which have come from other viruses, it has taken many years. It's taken at least 2-3 years for herd immunity to develop. And we cannot afford to wait. Why don't we want to wait? In earlier years, we waited because we didn't have technology. See, when smallpox started, smallpox is supposed to have started in the human communities about 12,000 years ago. And we could eradicate smallpox much recently only. So that was all because we didn't have technology, we didn't have some facilities, and from Neolithic stage, man was moving into a kind of, agricultural existence, and so many things happened. So herd immunity is something that could come in months or in years or in decades. We do not, as such, we do not. So let's not wait for herd immunity. And the other difficulty about herd immunity is, before herd immunity develops, you could lose lives. We don't want to lose lives. That is why we are advocating distancing. Now, yet another thing about herd immunity. What exactly is herd immunity? Let's say there is a community of about 100 people. 80 people get exposed. Imagine 100 people standing. 80 people get exposed. 20 people have not been exposed. These 80 people develop antibodies in them. That is what is herd immunity. They have developed antibodies. They can fight the virus. And these 80 people are surrounding the unexposed 20. And that unexposed 20 also get protected because the chain cannot percolate in. It is like you'll have to imagine a circle. The virus is trying to come from outside. 80 people who are standing in the perimeter of the circle are preventing the virus from coming in because they have antibodies. Even if the virus comes in, it gets disintegrated in them. And the remaining 20 who are standing inside, the old and the very young, the children, whom we say don't get exposed, those people get protected. But then for the 80 to develop this immunity, it takes long time, one. And if they get into a serious illness, of the 80, if 20 die, then the inner 20 get exposed much earlier also. So we don't want deaths. That is why we advocate physical distancing. And Madan, I'm not able to see questions, other questions, like, let me scroll through and find.
I'll read those
Please.
questions, ma'am. Ma'am, there is one question which was asked. Is there any specific nutritive prescription to boost immunity?
Nothing specific, but then our Siddha formulations, our Ayurvedic formulations have been giving good immune boost. In fact, I have no time to give a detailed explanation here. But then many of these Siddha formulations, which even our university is working with, like the Kabasura Kudineer that you hear, the Nilavembu Kudineer, which you would have heard during the dengue time, the Nochi plant that many of you would be aware of and grow in your gardens as an anti-mosquito plant. And there are other plants like, the ones that we use, the tuber that we use, you would have heard of Chittarattai. Now these all, Pirandai, now all these seem to have, number one, immune boost property, number two, antiviral property. But I'm not going into the details of antiviral property here because we need to prove the antiviral property further. Even I have done some study and our own university has done some study where we found that all these, whatever formulations that I enumerated, whatever plants that I enumerated, there's a plant called Arinjil, there is a plant called Elilai Palai, there is Nochi, there is Perandai, there is Neer Brahmi. Now we've done work on all these plants, and all these plants seem to have different antiviral properties. We are continuing to work on other viruses. Why I say other viruses? During a pandemic, you cannot work directly on the particular virus because there is a danger of spreading that virus. So I'm trying to work on surrogate viruses. Surrogate viruses here, I'll mean the coronaviruses which produce diseases in the birds and the rodents. So, but we need time to prove that. We probably would be proving the antiviral property in the next few months or even less than a month's time. But then that is different. We've still not proved the antiviral property. What we have proved already is the immune boost property of these compositions, the Kabasura Kudineer and Nilavembu Kudineer. The immune boost property has been proved. That is why we say take all these immune boosters. People can take any of the immune boosters, and there are also Ayurvedic preparations which are immune boosters. In fact, the same drug or the same formulation you find in different names. What you find on one side is Gudichi. People have a tablet which is made in the name of Gudichi, and in the north it's in the name of Giloy, which is in Tamil called the Seendil. So Seendil is part of the Kabasura Kudineers. Either you take the Gudichi tablet or you take the Kabasura Kudineer. All these will give you immune boost. You can also include food items which can be immune boosters. The turmeric powder that we regularly use, the manjal that we use in our Indian system of cooking, it's a good immune booster. You can take things like, ginger. You can have pepper, black pepper, and if you have tulasi, Madan was referring to tulasi, the osimum, and there are other leaves. I'll just enumerate these leaves, whichever you have. What I advocate to my friends, I'll tell you. If you have tulasi, if you have karpuravalli, if you have one vettalai. Now these are leaves which are very, very easily available. What you can do is just put 4 leaves of karpuravalli, 4 tulasi leaves, basil leaves, and 1 vettalai, and add a little pepper powder, add a little turmeric powder, boil the entire thing. Just boil it and then allow it to cool. If you want for taste, add a little salt also. Nothing is lost. And it tastes like your rasam. You can have it. You can drink it. You can make this every day. It's a very simple preparation. And add a little ginger also, preferably the dried ginger, what we call the chukku. Or you can add even regular ginger. Take off the peeling, peel it off, peel the skin off and put this ginger. So all these combinations, whichever leaf you have osamam, you have karpuravalli, you have vettalai, you have inji, you have black pepper. You put all this, boil, and put a little turmeric powder, put a little salt, and take it. That's going to be a good immune booster. You can take vitamin C, you can take zinc, which several preparations are available in the market. You can take a zinc tablet, or you can take vitamin C. All these are good boosters, immune boosters. You can take Nellikai, which is again a good immune booster. Now these are all things which are there in our own system of food. So all these can be utilized.
There are 2 questions from students.
Yeah.
One is, does coronavirus spread through wounds?
Spread through?
Is after the college wounds.
Wound. Adipatta. That is what you mean, right? Injury or wound.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, apro. What is the next question? What is the next question?
Other one is, after the colleges has reopened, how do we maintain social distancing among ourselves?
Okay, good. Good. Right, I'll go to the wound thing first. Yes, it may. We still, not much of work has gone on. But it may, because it's the blood, it's the body secretion. So there could be serum coming out there. It may not be directly be present in the serum or whatever, but in any body secretion, it may, because the virus has been detected in urine, in feces, in any body secretion. So it may spread through the wound. Not much of regular work has gone on in that because the accidents had gone down during the lockdown period all over the world. So the wound part of it is not very clearly known, but I wouldn't say it cannot spread. It can. That's one. Second thing, once the college starts, how do we keep the distancing? Don't worry. The colleges and educational institutions will be given their own regulations. And I think all that would recommence only when we are very sure that some kind of mechanism is put in place with regard to distancing and with regard to herd immunity, that we have some information. Only then, I suppose, the kind of combined classes or the kind of classes where 100 people will sit in a room will start. Until then, it could probably not start. We're not very sure, but then don't worry, you would be given the regulations and the rules at that point of time. I just saw one question coming in, but then I couldn't read it. Yeah.
Yeah. I will read it. I will read it, ma'am. Madam, recently we heard like this is not a virus, but it shows bacterial properties and symptoms. Is it a believable information?
Please don't go by all the information that you get in the social media. That is what I would say. It is a virus. Yes, the virus has been noted. The virus has been seen. You'll have to understand, doing a study at this point of time when the pandemic is on is very difficult. Somebody is very sick. I cannot go tell that person, I want to do an experiment on you, right? So all the studies that world over people are trying to do is only under restricted circumstances. And we are trying to compare and get some information and try and kind of say, this is what we saw there, this is what we see here. So try and link it up. So the studies are not final, number one. Number two, a viral infection in a person whose immunity is a little low can also lead to a superimposed bacterial infection. So a particular person could have had a bacterial infection also. And whatever kind of, the social media clipping which talked about the bacteria also said, like, this is a bacteria which is affecting the blood vessels. That is where the clipping was kind of, maneuvered, because the virus as such, SARS-CoV-2 virus as such, is creating what is called a cytokine storm. And this cytokine storm can affect the blood vessels. Yes, it is affecting the blood vessels. It's creating microclots in the blood vessels. On one side, it creates microclots. On the other side, if the cytokine storm is affecting the lungs, it can cause a pneumonia-like picture. So don't think that only a bacteria can produce a clot. Even a virus can produce a clot because of so many mechanisms which go on. So please don't go by all this kind of, the infodemics, the flooding of information, or the kind of misinformation that goes on. Let's do what we have to do. And in case, God forbid, in case any of you happen to find any illness in yourself, you think that you have a symptom, please get medical help immediately. Don't hesitate, don't wait, don't think that you can treat yourself. Don't go by whatever that comes out in the WhatsApp or any other social media. Don't think that is what it says, so this is what I have. Don't kind of make your own judgments. Seek medical help.
Ma'am, one last question.
Yes,
Again, it's something related to the rumors that are going around.
Yeah.
One of them is that people with O blood group are not affected. Is it true, ma'am?
We are not sure. We don't know. We don't know. That's why I told you, don't go by all this information. Think that everyone is susceptible and try to take precaution. See, most of the things, even if at some point of time, people with O group will not get, it could be that all the information that we get, or even if we do a proper study, we will not be able to say 100% O group people will not get. I'm overstretching it. Even if I do a study today and see that O group people are less susceptible, I cannot vouchsafe that all O group people will not get. It can only be O group people are less susceptible, or O group people don't seem to get. There can be one person in that O group who could get the infection. So why do you want to risk it? Unless it's very clearly told, very clearly proved, which will not happen for the next few years. Don't think that we can just like that prove these things. These things require a lot of trial, and without trial, all this cannot be proved. So don't take the risk. That is what we can do. Let's not take the risk, and let's try to be as prudent in exercising preventive measures.
Ma'am, one more question from a student.
Yes.
A series of favorable mutations in the viral genome may lead to emergence of a new strain of the virus. What is the current situation of corona in this aspect?
We do not know. Again, we have had point mutations, but these point mutations don't seem to, at this point of time, projecting to a less virulent strain. These are only clades which are happening now. I'm not even very sure if strains have come out, because strain is slightly different. You know, these are small mutations, and these mutations don't seem to have much value in the pathogenesis of the disease. See, I'll put it this way. There is a genomic sequence, and somewhere at 10th position, there had been a change of the base pair. But that does not seem to affect the way the disease is produced, or does not seem to affect the virus getting disintegrated. So it's not going to make a lot of difference to us at this point of time. And fondly hope that the virus will keep on mutating to a less virulent strain and disappear. Yes, we fondly hope. At this point of time, we don't know.
Thank you so much, ma'am. There are so many other questions, but for want of
Time.
time.
Yeah, Madan, what you could do is probably you can send them to me by mail, and I can respond by mail to you, and you can give it to the concerned people who had asked for the questions. Over the weekend, if that is possible, we could do that. And thanks a lot, everybody. I enjoyed the session. I hope it was of help to you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Madam Masaki, and thanks very much, Dr. Madan. Thank you.
I now request Dr. Vigneshwara, Assistant Professor in the Department of Mathematics, to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Madan, 1 second, just before the vote of thanks, I do see a question there, which I think...
Okay, ma'am.
See, there's someone has asked, asymptomatic people are not contagious.
Yeah, it is now appeared.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The thing
Yes,
is that
please,
that was a wrong information that circulated. There was some kind of a miscommunication. I suppose you're referring to the WHO information that came a few days ago. That was a wrong information. See, it was a misquote. Now, supposing I'm talking to you for about an hour or so, you take one line from here and take one line from there, and if you try and put them, you get a wrong information. That's what had happened, presumably, in the WHO press meet. And many of you may not be aware, WHO even released a rebuttal to that, saying that that was a wrong quote and it was a misquote. And there had been some studies, somebody had done a study trying to see if the asymptomatic people were transmitting or not. Let's not bother. At this point of time, it is very important to prevent. And if we need to prevent, we have to think that the transmission is going on. If the transmission is not there, it is good. At some point, we'll find there are no new cases at all. So don't risk all that. Take that everyone is COVID positive and accordingly modify yourself. That will be my very, very humble request. And thanks a lot, Madan. Let's go on. Let's move further.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. Very good afternoon to all present here. It's my pleasure and honor to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the organizers First and foremost, I thank our Secretary and Director, Madam, for motivating us to organize such type of programs, which are the need of the hour. I thank our guest of honor, Dr. Sudha Sesayan, Vice Chancellor, Dr. MGR Medical University, for her wonderful presentation on COVID-19 and its. Madam has very well explained about do's and don'ts in this critical situation. Thank you, Madam. Also, I extend my heartfelt thanks to our Principal Sir, Dean R&D Sir, CEO Sir, and AO Sir for their motivation and guidance. Also, I thank Dr. S.R. Madan Sangar, Dean Academics, for arranging this lecture. Thank you, sir. I thank all the participants for their participation in this session, which helps them to face this pandemic situation very well. Once again, I thank you, everyone. Thank you.
A special thanks from me, madam. It was wonderful. It made us very clear about everything, which a lot of people were having so many ifs and buts. And I'd like to invite you to our college sometime. Once everything becomes normal, we would love to have you in our institution. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, madam. I would also love to come to your institution. Let's hope that the situations become better.
Ma'am, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
You will have to visit our institution because you will see beautiful trees in our campus. You would love to see that.
Yeah, definitely, Madan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.